I started the blog and podcast, the Blockchain Socialist, a bit over 3 years ago, and part of making that platform was meeting and people reaching out to me who were either working in the crypto world, either in some sort of like degen DeFi thing, or people who wanted to sort of work in the crypto world or whatever, but they wanted to do something specifically to build kind of more tools and applications within like a progressive political vision, rather than making like meme coins or like, helping with just speculation over DeFi. And so part of that for me was then thinking about what is the response for kind of generally I would say the more conservative or kind of neoliberal approach to building blockchain and crypto applications in the crypto world, like the standard, and how do we build something different? So the idea is, how do we build post-capitalist applications given what exists at the moment and what is there, and how we can take advantage of that in order for, I think, a kind of a left that would then be able to plug into that infrastructure and have kind of clear direction into what types of applications are necessary to build and how we can actually leverage that in a way that makes sense, rather than sort of always being on the reactive side of, say, later something happens and people are like, oh, this crypto stuff is really important, we need to do something right now. We instead have like been building this infrastructure for a while that when the time comes and when it's necessary, that we have the infrastructure to take advantage of. And so the project is a federation of sort of politically aligned projects, so that includes the Crypto Commons Association. I'm just going on the website. Labor DAO and Pact DAO, which are two other projects, and then Breadchain itself. Breadchain, people that are in like this core team, we generally focus more on application building and sort of software development, because the idea is that we shouldn't expect kind of like every kind of progressive organization that wants to do crypto things to be able to hire a Solidity developer. So instead, we're kind of working together to build the applications that we think generally our type of people will likely need. And so part of this federation, or one of the sort of projects that we built out first, is called the crowd staking application, which is heavily associated with our bread token. And so we call it the currency for solidarity. It's meant to be kind of our own cooperative community currency that we use within the network. But so to kind of show you a little bit of the mechanism of how it works, you have users who would use DAI. DAI is a US dollar stablecoin. They would send that DAI to the crowd staking application, and that DAI would be then forwarded and lent out to Aave. All of the interest that gets accumulated would go towards the cooperative to help fund projects there. And then the user would receive one-to-one in collateral the bread token. So the bread token would be like it's just a version of wrapped DAI. It's just a representation of DAI that's being lent out on Aave. And then you can use that bread token as any other ERC20 tokens. You could send it, receive it, you can do whatever you want with it. That's within the ERC20 standard. So right, we accrue interest, and the interest can be withdrawn by those who are part of the Breadchain multi-signature wallet. So those are the members of the cooperative. And then that would go out to help funding these projects and so forth. What's also nice is that you can burn that bread to receive back the same amount of DAI. So you're not giving a donation. You're not losing like access to your original funds. You're just giving us the interest that you would otherwise get if you were to stake it on Aave or something like that. So the point here is that we're trying to solve this problem, I think, of being both needing to survive within capitalism while also trying to be against capitalism. To me, this is like the ultimate dilemma that if you're sort of against the system to have to deal with, that oftentimes organizations will, maybe it's a bit idealistic, depend on donations from people who feel good about them, but over time people will either burn out, they'll run out of resources. What we're trying to do here is build something that can sort of passively accumulate wealth within our locality being kind of people who are politically aligned with kind of our vision and our ideas. So it's just taking like the concept of a local currency, which is meant to keep wealth within the locality, but here we define our locality in the digital world, which is like people who are friends with one another and want to do politics together. Right. So, but at the same time, you have the same functionality of like the DAI token. So it's like, yeah. So it's also, you can think of it as, I mean, if we want to stretch the metaphor a little bit, they're kind of like the leftist credit union over the blockchain, where we have this, but the funds sort of inside are collectively determined by those who are members of the cooperative. The idea in the future, of course, is once we have a lot more wealth, that we can begin to open up governance over that accumulated wealth through different governance mechanisms, which I'll go into a little bit later. And so in case you want to try out the application, we designed it in a way to be as simple as possible for someone who has like never used a crypto application before, or at least we tried to. So, right, you'll see kind of like, it looks like a 8-bit version of Uniswap almost right now. We're doing a little bit of a revamp for like a sleeker design, but it'll more or less look the same. But so right now we see that we have, in one direction we're going from DAI to bread. We can see by this arrow, if we click on the arrow, they would switch, and then the button down here would change to burn bread, back to bake bread, and I would, yeah, we've been, yeah, burn or toast, I don't know. But, and so whatever number you want to put, you'll always get the same number in the output box, and that's because bread is meant to be one-to-one with DAI. So what's backing your bread is always 100% collateralized. There's no leverage being put on the collateral, so we can always like be certain, relatively certain at least in crypto world, that we're not using your funds in a bad way, or that like your funds are being hacked or something like that. And so, yeah, it takes like just like a second to kind of do, and then, okay, I need my DAI now, and I don't want to support bread chain anymore, let's say. You could then go in the opposite direction, and you'll still receive the same amount in the output. So that never changes. Right. So part of the, I think, context of the DeFi world, playing a part of it, is that every token, of course, is or can be or is available on a free market. So it's available on a decentralized exchange like Uniswap, for example. And so this being like a very strongly pegged token means that there is, of course, an attack surface. If some people put bread with some other token onto Uniswap, then they could kind of manipulate the price in order to be able to always either like arbitrage by knowing that they have a fixed price in the application versus like a very high or a very low price on the exchange. And so that's something we want to mitigate against. And so what we use for that is a tool called Arrakis. Arrakis is a managed liquidity pool vault. So on Uniswap, you can provide liquidity. So that means you provide 2 different tokens for people to be able to swap their tokens. And Arrakis allows you to provide liquidity at a specific price point, but for anybody to sort of join in that pool. So Uniswap v3, you can always provide liquidity for a specific price range. So I can say like, for bread, for example, since we are one-to-one with DAI, we want a very, very small price range with between bread and DAI. So we do a fraction of a penny below and a fraction of a penny above, in order to just provide like you need to provide a range, so we do like the smallest range possible, around 1-to-1. So in that way, if someone wants to, let's say they want to buy bread, but they don't want to do it with DAI, they want to do it with Matic, another this is all built on Polygon, so another Polygon token, then they're able to do so without manipulating or getting like an unfair price otherwise. I think so. Our main like Solidity developer is the founder of Arrakis on the down low, and I think they have Spice as like their governance token or something like that. I don't remember. What? But yeah, so right now, in case you don't like know, all this stuff is kind of permissionless. So this is all something that other people can do without needing our permission or to ask us to do anything. You can sort of provide support for such a project if you want to. You can mint bread. You can provide liquidity on decentralized on Uniswap. There is, of course, like you would receive part of the fees if you contribute in that. Fees being from people who are trading over Uniswap. And so yeah, here we're trying to do the things in order to prevent attacks from maybe bad doers.
It says TVL 5.7K. Is that like the total liquidity in the pool?
Right now, yeah. So right now it's just adding up total bread and total DAI that's in the pool.
And why you selected Arrakis? Because it looks like there's some other platforms, or only one permission.
Because the main guy that I was working with for building smart contracts is the founder of Arrakis. He worked at Gelato before, and then he co-founded Arrakis with the people from Gelato. And so yeah, the next sort of stage that we want to get to, the next kind of a milestone that we're building out, is building out a dashboard for people to understand kind of the state of the economy, of the bread economy, and their place within the bread economy. So I'm kind of inspired a bit by CyberSyn, which was like the project under Salvador Allende before he was couped. But essentially, so this is just the Figma file that we've been working on. We're of what kind of relatively what it would look like at the moment. But essentially, the idea is that, right, take the example of like someone, if you receive like an electric bill, and on that electric bill you can see how much on average your neighborhood uses electricity, and then you can see if you are above or below average on the use of electricity. Studies usually show that like if someone sees that they're above average, then they usually take steps or measures in order to decrease their use of electricity, because they have this information, because they know relatively where they stand. And this is kind of like you call it like a libertarian paternalism. They're just like providing the information like, hey, just so you know, but like we're not forcing you to use less electricity, you know? So I'm trying to take that idea a bit with using this dashboard that you can know on the top level kind of like where the bread economy is at now. So you can see like the total amount of bread that has been minted. You can see like the average amount that somebody has within, like the average amount of bread someone holds out of all the holders. We can see the liquidity on Arrakis. You don't have to always go to Arrakis if you don't want to. We can see like the yield on Aave that we currently have. And then as well, we have this, I think, kind of cool mechanism where you can help claim the yield. So the claiming aspect for the yield from Aave can be done by anybody. So we think it's like a cool way to kind of allow people to be involved, so we don't have to do it ourselves if we don't want to. And that's another thing that is, of course, recorded on a blockchain, so we can use that maybe for governance later. But anybody is allowed to claim the yield and know how much yield is currently available. Yeah, and that goes to the cooperative. And then, yeah, the bottom would show, you know, how much bread you have in your wallets, like what is your current stake in the economy, so you can see. And then I think we can do kind of like these nudges to know, like, are you above or below the average of, the amount of bread an average holder has, and have like either a red light or something like that, so you know, oh, I'm a little bit below, maybe I should get more, or these types of kind of ways of playing with data and being able to kind of synthesize a lot of information quickly to kind of like know kind of like where you stand. But that's sort of like our next milestone and thing that we're building. At the moment, the other kind of like main thing that we're wanting to do, and is a call to action for all of you here, is this quest chain. So quest chain is just like a, I think it was built by Metagame, but essentially it's kind of, you can do different quests, and then if you submit that you've done this quest, then the reviewer will approve it, and then if you do all the quests, then you receive an NFT to kind of note that, hey, this person has completed this quest. And so what we're trying to do is we want to identify the type of people who are interested in building some type of post-capitalism before we necessarily have, we're not like interested in trying to like have concrete like financial incentives for you to partake in our ecosystem, but instead try to identify the core people who believe in it themselves and want to take part in it. And so we have, of course, different types of measures we can look at. We can see like if someone has held bread, how long they've held bread, like if they've used it for something or not. But here is another kind of mechanism we're looking into using more. Basically, we just have a bunch of quests here. So we have a blog on Mirror where we have more information about kind of like our principles, our values, and as well how the different stuff that we're using works. We have, of course, a quest to bake some bread. So if you bake some bread, you can submit that you've done that request or done that quest, and all you would do is you would click submit proof, and you can either like type something out if it's like a typed one, or you can upload the image that, hey, I've minted bread. And when you finish all of them, you would submit them, and then I can see, I think it's, yeah, if I switch here, switch to member view, then I can review the submissions, and then I would approve it to see that you actually did it, and then you would receive the NFT, which is this one here, which has the new logo that we're going to roll out at some point. And also I have stickers if you want. And so yeah, and then you would have this NFT, and the idea as well, in partnership with the Crypto Commons Association, is that if you get the NFT before the end of the year, then next year you have access to some discounts to events.
Specifically, you get a 5% discount on a ticket of an event in 2024 if you do this thing before 2023 ends and you show us the NFT. And we are happy, you are happy. Money for the left.
So yeah, so the idea is like with this federation, we all kind of benefit from the use of the token, and so we try to, because we already have this infrastructure existing, that we can sort of find ways that we can mutually help each other out in this type of way. And yeah, I guess I'll stop there. That was a lot. And leave some room for questions, maybe.
Yeah, I have some comment. Thank you, Blockchain, for sponsoring this event, as always have been since the beginning. No, I think it's quite interesting, this return of cyber scene in our lives or in our conversations. And also related to the podcast published by Morozov, Santiago Boys, which is really recommended. Listen to it, it's super interesting. But I think it's not also that. I think it's also that we are coming to understand that we can actually build collective infrastructure and that we just need the imagination and the will to do it. What I find really interesting, for example, about the cyber scene that really struck me, I was discussing these days with people, is that the level of technological development we are living in is important, because we cannot imagine something which is like completely unfeasible technically, but still the main point is that we need to want to do it now, because when CyberSyn was conceived, there were like 4 computers in the whole country in Chile, and they were thinking like, okay, let's plan the economy. So maybe it wouldn't even have worked, even without the CIA killing all the fucking people involved. But yeah, let's not be too realistic or too cautious and say, no, we have to wait. No, we don't have the tools to do it. Yeah, related to the CIA, second point, I think we should really discuss about how to develop infrastructures. Also from the point of view of the powers at play actively trying to destroy them, because it will be, I think, yeah, the main problem of the next decades. Not much can we technically afford it, but can we do it without somebody destroying it? So yeah.
Thank you. I think Ome has.
Thank you for the presentation. It makes me think what kind of projects you would like to see onboarding early, and what is the process to submit a proposal, and then how are those contributions happening? Is it the holders of the multisig that decide when and how to fund what? Yep.
So at the moment, yes, it's the multi-sig owners who own kind of what's in the treasury. So like right now, I mean, as usual, any sort of group like this doesn't receive very much funding. We're not like accepting venture capital investments or things like this. The idea and the hope with the application is just kind of like a start of trying to figure out alternatives to funding. Of course, there are things like Gitcoin, but I mean, Gitcoin has its own problems and is also rarely like a whole lot of money for a lot of these types of groups. I think there's a need to kind of build more of these types of alternatives to venture capital in crypto is kind of the idea that we have. So I mean, like, we're not going to accept VC funding, so that's one thing. I think right now, like within the multi-sig, it's very organic. We all have very high trust with one another. It's with, I mean, Julio, I think you were there last year with Larry and Marissa, who are part of the other projects, and then other people who have been helping out for some time now. So the idea with now why we're pushing this, we want to push this more, is to provide a space then to say, okay, now we can identify the people who want to take part in this project with us, and we can do this with on-chain tools. And then we can begin to build out, like, opening up kind of the governance surface of the project.
And is there any project that you would like to see onboarding as a beneficiary of this funding mechanism?
Yeah, the list is too long. I think there's a lot of ideas for things that should happen, but of course I cannot do all of them. But one of the things that I think is next, that I think is really necessary for building a foundation, is like educational courses, essentially. So right now, right, you can. One of the things about like cryptocurrency, like it is, I think, very difficult to bring that into the real world and make that something that to make this something that like producers use, especially in an environment, like coming from an environment that's highly digital and highly like delocalized. And I think other projects are doing that instead. So for me, the focus right now should be more on the digital and like digital goods. And so I think what the digital brings is just a lot of information. And so one of the things we want to do within like the Discord, and I invite people if they're interested in like giving a class or giving a course for people, is to use, to have people give courses that are like paid in bread, for example. I think that's like the start. One, because there needs to be like a big educational push in order to expand like the population of people who are viewing crypto through like a left-wing lens, and as well, I think bringing in the crypto people who are interested in learning more about these kind of left-wing concepts. So to me, that's like the next sort of thing that we need to be building out, and part of this is through this question thing. But of course, if you have ideas for something that you think would be really interesting and you would like to be a part of it, then like definitely reach out, let me know, ask me, and we can talk.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. So you finally took the pull together model and using all proceeds for the for the community benefit. I think it's exciting. So, and my question is, what are like KPIs or some assumptions for example next 2 years? So what amount of TVL you plan to attract then? What maybe like 3 main infrastructure projects you want to build with this? I mean, top 3 projects that should help the whole ecosystem to grow. What are the main directions for for development?
So I mean, the main KPI in something like this is volume of bread that's minted, because that's what
The TVL, yeah.
as far as like how much money we're able to get out of it. I think part of the still what I am also interested in is having people like quite engaged in what we want to do as well. So I mean, one is this like educational push, and having like a system where people can, 1, learn more about crypto, or 2, learn more about like kind of political theory that we're interested in. I think it would be like I was out at MetaFest. I found a lot of people were interested in like this workshop that I did off the fly of like what is post-capitalism. So I think there's like a big hunger for that for people in crypto. And then I think the kind of next stuff, I mean, the other thing is the dashboard, I think is very important, and as well, maybe like finding, I think we need to have probably an alternative way to help fund at the same time at the moment if we want to get like immediate funds. Right now, I've mostly been just getting small grants from various things, mostly individuals within the Ethereum Foundation who listen to my podcast have given me grants. Yeah, so I think maybe those 3 are kind of like the main focus right now. I think there is a need for like building a more robust like ecosystem of things that you can do with bread, and those are things that like are open to like partnership with others. So we're also working with Gitcoin. We're in discussions to add bread as an option once they expand their Allogrants protocol to Polygon. So there's also that as well. So I think there's a need for like a marketing push, and the idea is that for me, people who are interested in public goods funding, especially on like Gitcoin, can kind of double dip their public goods funding, because they would fund projects and then passively earn interest for other, what I would call public goods funding as well.
Yeah.
If you have any ideas though,
I have, yeah.
then
I will reach out to you after
Sure.
the presentation.
Yeah. So I'm stupid. I don't get it. First question is like, I missed, these karate things where they're fighting and then the next image they're upside down. It felt a little bit to me like, how do you go from bread minting to something like knowing the energy use and like your relative thing? So I didn't understand how these 2 were related. And the second question, and maybe this answers the whole thing. Isn't this just a fund? Like how you would traditionally do a fund, you just decide, okay, we pool money together. Instead of investing in stocks or something, in this case, we invest in a lending pool, providing liquidity there, and we take the revenue. Yeah, but please.
So to the first question, so for me, like I think we have to think about who is the post-capitalist subject. Like the subject under capitalism is someone who is like fighting in the seas of the market and like trying to one up someone else in order to get ahead within that market. The idea for me here, I think a post-capitalism requires a measure of collective intelligence, or like a knowledge and understanding of where they are within the system, and to identify what that system is. And part of that, I think, is reducing information asymmetry. So by providing, I mean, the good part and the bad part at the same time of blockchain systems is everything is legible. Everything is like, at least things that are not like under certain cryptography primitives. So the idea here for me is like by providing information to like the person who's taking part in the system, then we're able to like create a post-capitalist subject, someone who is like part of like this collective intelligence to know what they are a part of and like where they stand in it.
So would it be fair to say like a precursor to become a post-capitalist subject would be that you actually have information about whatever the thing. So in this case, the information is, let's say, the financial accounting of bread that you provide.
I mean, not just the financial accounting of bread, but like many different like data points that we're collecting that we can find on chain and show to a user.
What other than financial data? Like I still don't understand how this goes to let's say energy use.
I mean, I was just using that as a metaphor for like, if I know that like I'm at a certain point or in a certain place within the system, then I can take certain actions in order to assist that system or help the system be healthier. I can take like actions for myself. In the same way that like, if I know that like my energy use is really high compared to everybody else, I'm probably a contributor to like the average being higher of energy use, and I'm a climate conscious person, so I want to reduce my energy use.
Yeah, like besides that most people I talk to don't give a shit, but in any case,
but that's because this is people. It's you have to create, I think, like the subject, create the conditions for the subject of that.
Yeah, but like for the bread, what would the thing then be that I see? Like, oh, I minted more bread than other people, or I have less bread than other people, or my API for this thing is better than somebody else, or like, can you go make it concrete for bread? The same
sure,
example?
yeah. I mean, I can go through the data points afterwards because I know that. I think he wants to move on.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I'll grill you later.
And then I forgot what the second question was.
It's just a fund.
No, I
yes.
mean, in a logic sense, yes. I mean, a local currency scheme is, you can say in some ways, a fund. But I think the word fund can be very broad and abstract. But we're mimicking the local currency kind of schema, where usually they would receive, the national currency, and they would give out loans within the economy for like helping build local businesses or cooperatives or whatever. And so people are giving up access to their national currency, and they're using the local one. The difficult part there is that that's a lot of bureaucracy. You have to do the loans, and then you can't easily switch out your local currency notes if there's not enough collateral of the national currency left. So we're trying to take advantage of affordances there.
Josh loves speaking about blockchain, so you can ask him anytime in these days. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have Vasily Sumanov presenting his tokenomics evaluation framework. He has terrific knowledge, really terrific knowledge of what he's speaking about. So we're very grateful that he's here, because I think we are not degens and we're not into DeFi so much, but sometimes we lack the technical depth that is required to engage with these technical systems. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for the introduction. Hey everyone, I'm Vasily. We met yesterday with someone. So it's not about the degenerity and about the DeFi. It's purely about token engineering stuff. So it's not DeFi focused, not degen focused, I think. So it's more about the understanding of the nature of assets and what value is behind them. Because we tried to understand the value of money yesterday. We only started with it, and this process will be quite long. And now you can imagine that you have tokens with different functions, which are much more broader than money in general. So I think it's even more complicated topic, and I will try to get some insights to you, on this topic. How to make it the full screen? Yeah.
Okay, you go up and down.
Yeah, so the talk is about the value capturing theory for digital assets. So it's like a presentation of upcoming academic article. It's quite big, and the working draft is also presented at the end of this lecture. There will be a link, so you can find it and read if you want. So the main problem that I personally saw the last years in in token engineering space is that we still don't have any particular systematic theory for value capturing of digital assets. So we have a lot of digital assets, we have a lot of tokens. People create tokens. Often they do it without any knowledge or without any understanding what they particularly do from the economic point of view. People do some token taxonomies, frameworks for token analysis, for classifications, etc. So I saw a lot of them, but to my knowledge and in my understanding, none of them can answer about the value of tokens particularly. It's some concrete terms, measurements, and understanding how it really works. So I'm in token engineering and in crypto in general for a long time, so I make some systematic understanding of this and developed a theory that I want to present today. So the main first idea here is that we have decentralized networks now. So on the decentralized networks are some extension of the concept of the firm from my point of view. So there was a value creation chain for a firm a long time ago. After that, there was a value creation shops and networks that pointed out that that value can be intangible, that it can be, the website can produce a lot of value, for example, as an information resource or as an e-commerce shop. So because before the dot-com bubble, people thought that, okay, the value can be produced only with physical goods. You have a tree, you build a table from it, you sold the table with some surplus, and you think, okay, this is a value creation. But in decentralized networks, the value is created a lot, right? You know this, that, and for example, in 2010, there was a BitTorrent network, 1 billion of users, no token, no shares, no public traded stocks. So it's quite a big network with a lot of value produced. I think everyone used BitTorrent sometimes in life, but there was no asset that captures all the value from this network. So now we are living in, in the world where decentralized networks are, I think, the ultimate types of, human coordination frameworks. And the value is produced in these networks based on the agents coordination. This is what I try to understand through this theory. So my questions are how token captures value from the system, because we have a system and we have a token aside that these two particular objects are not connected sometimes. What issue solves token in the system? How is value captured by the token corresponding the value captured by the system? And how we can we classify all the analogies and similarities in the space, because there are a lot of tokens, and I think it's evident that we don't have 100 token models or 500 token models. They are different, but they have a lot of similarities, and this is what I try to understand. So the basic mind map for structuring the network value is presented here. So I consider that we have a value network at the zero stage without any token. It's a value network without any token with a raw coordination value. So for example, the Uniswap, before the token was introduced, so people created pools, people traded, people supplied liquidity, but there was no unit token, no governance, nothing. So it was a value network because any trade adds value to the system, paying fees. Any new pool adds value to the system because you have more liquidity routes and this system is more useful for traders. Any new liquidity provision adds liquidity in the system. So the system also becomes more attractive for end users, right? So this was big value network, the market leader, but no token, right? After token was added, there was some mechanism design and policies applied for a token. For example, one unit token is one vote, the simplest example possible. So you can vote, it's easy. So this opportunity to vote is a predictor for the origin of value, because if you can vote, it's something valuable, right? Possibly. So, and when you have an original value, you can construct the value capturing mechanisms from it and move to the implementation patterns. So implementation pattern is something that you code it and code it really works in mainnet. So here are definitions for the theory. The main three definitions are here. So it's original value, value capturing mechanism, and value capturing implementation pattern. So original value is like an elementary economic mechanism that acts as a predictor for tokens value. For example, you can vote, this is a value because you can manage the limited resources. So this is like elementary economic mechanism that you can find in a token. So value capturing mechanism is a combination of these origins of value in different forms, and value capturing implementation pattern is implementation of this combination. So if we will make an analogy, so we have a gear, it's an original value, we have two gears that work together. It's a mechanism, and we have a bicycle and two gears and bike chain. This is a particular implementation pattern, and this is a product that really works and people can use it. So this is a simple analogy. And our goal in this theory is to decompose all tokens to the mechanisms, to the origins of value, and understand how the value of token arises from this, from these roots. So this theory and the classification has three main levels. As I said before, we have origins of value, we have value capturing mechanisms as a combinations of these origins of value, and we have value capturing implementation patterns that are mainly the particular token models. But for example, Uniswap governance using a forked compound governance, right? Maybe you know that. So it's quite interesting. So even in code implementations, because we are in open source, world and open source software, we can, get some forks and get some particular implementations also copied by other projects. And this is very interesting. You can find that, for example, in Uniswap, the code base for governance is based on the compound code, for example. And this is a good example of, using the value capturing implementation pattern in the very big tier 1 project. So this is the same thing posted as a graph. So origins of value capturing mechanisms, and implementation patterns that are combined into each other. So this is a value capturing function. It's like a generalized equation just to demonstrate the dependence of things. So we have two parts in the value. We have positive part is a Q, and we have negative part is L. The thing is that if you own any kind of asset, you never own only positive part of it. You also have some losses, risks, etc. For example, you own an apartment, you can rent it out, you can live in this apartment, it's some utility that you can get. But at the same time, you need to pay taxes for this apartment, you need to pay utility bills, you need to pay for some repairment, so it's a lot of costs that are associated with ownership of this apartment. Even if you don't live there, you need to pay taxes, right, so etc. So, and for tokens, it's the same. If you own some token and if you use it in the network and trying to use it according to the function that was designed by the protocol developers, you have gains or utility part, and you have losses or negative part for this utility. So Q is a general utility of holding some amount of tokens at some price with some given blockchain state and during some time there. And L is the costs, risks, and some actions that you need to perform to get this utility. For example, if you want to get utility from Ethereum, you need to stake it into the validator, right? So you have a risk of being slashed, and you have some costs of running the node and some conditional actions that you need to do to access this value. So this is a simplest example that is, I think, easily understandable. So this formula looks like some complicated thing, but it's not a rational formula. It's just a dependence, just to demonstrate dependence of things between each other. So we have 8 origins of value. I will go through them now. So at this moment, I can decompose any token on the market, anything, into these 8 origins of value and make a mechanism from that. So the first one is the most simplest one, is the value transfer, when the value of asset is gained based on involvement in settlements. So the thing is that, for example, if there's some community currency or basically some currency, right, the value of this currency is gained based on the involvement in settlements. Even the United States dollar value now is based on involvement in settlements and all the debts and the future demand for it. But anyway, it's involvement in settlements, right? So if, for example, we are talking about the stable coin, the value, it doesn't have this value transfer original value because the value of the stable coin is backed by something else, by some on-chain assets or off-chain assets, right? But not because the stable coin is widely used. It's a big difference, so you need to understand that. So the first is the value transfer. The second is the future cash flow. So it's quite simple original value. So you have a token, you hold the token in a value activated form. For example, for Ethereum, it's if the Ethereum is taken in the validator and you receive some cash flow on this position in tokens. So this is also original value. This is why this token becomes available for you. A lot of people using Ethereum for staking in validators, receiving the block rewards, MAV, and other types of income there and enjoying that, right? So the third original value is governance. So for the governance, the value is derived based on some possibility to manage some limited resources. So the governance value always is based on limited resource allocation. It can be DAO treasury, it can be time of developers, future road of the protocol development, etc. But anyway, it's influencing the limited resource management. Fourth is an access, when you can access some community or something else without compounding with any other origins of value. For example, one token, you can enter the Telegram, be in the community. If you have less than one token, you cannot do that. If you have 2 tokens, you wouldn't get any more utility than if you have 1, right? So you have, there's no sense for holding less than 1 token or more than 1 token in this case. For example, if the token is not transferable. So this is like a pure access origin of value. So the fifth is a representation, or as I said, backed by another asset. For example, the bread token is a good example of asset using the fifth origin of value because it's backed by DAI that is lent out in Aave. So it's quite simple here. So and the value of this asset is gained by being backed by some other asset. For example, like USDC is backed by US dollars in the bank, as we all think at least. So the value of staked Ethereum is backed by Ethereum in validators of Lido Finance. The value of DAI is backed by Ethereum in collaterals. The value of bread is backed by DAI, which is lent out on Aave, etc. So this is the representation original value. The sixth is a hedonic value or scarcity. It's quite interesting one because it can be applied to both fungible and non-fungible tokens. Because, for example, for the NFTs, the hedonic value is quite understandable. People trade, CryptoPunks, Bored Ape, some other community-based NFTs for some price and value these NFTs based on context, popularity, and social agreements. But for example, if you have a Bitcoin sent to your wallet from the Satoshi wallet, this Bitcoin also has some hedonic value, right? Or Ethereum from Vitalik's wallet or something like that. So even fungible assets can have some hedonic value in some cases. So the seventh and eighth original value is negative origins of value. So this is the token-related risk exposure, or simply, for example, the risks of slashing in validators. And 8 is conditional action. So the both origins of value, they are required to use asset productively. So you cannot stake Ethereum in validator without being exposed to slashing and without necessity to run a node, right? Or you cannot get discounts in some discount tokens if you never use this token for payments as a BNB on Binance. So you cannot do that. So the conditional action for getting some discounts is using this token for payment. So you need to use this token and buy it and carry all these actions to do. So this is the table of dependence of origins of value on some main coordinates here. So we have token price, number of tokens or share in the supply, state of the blockchain or the network, and time of holding token in the value activated form. I think I wouldn't go through all of them. I think I will go through the governance because the public goods and all the communities are relying on governance a lot. So I think the governance is very important. So in case of governance, for example, the token price. So if you already have a token position, the token price cannot influence your governance power, right? Because the price of the token is established on some other market, right? But the share in the supply definitely affects the the value of token for you, because the bigger share in supply in some governance you have, the more chance you have to influence the vote, to influence the outcome. So the bigger stake is more important for you in terms of governance. The state of blockchain is also important because it defines how many tokens and how much voting power have other participants in governance, right? So the same amount of tokens can be distributed differently across the wallets, and it can influence your personal value of participating in governance. And also the time, the longer you have these tokens holding in value activated form, for example, stake it somewhere to be able to participate in voting, the more voting you can participate in, the more value you can get from this governance, original value. So, and for example, in case of hedonic value, only the number of these tokens are important for you, or the share of the supply in the NFT collection. Because, for example, the state of the blockchain of other tokens are not so important in majority of cases. But this can be discussed, so it's an open question, I think. So, but all these origins of value, they're combined into the value capturing mechanism. So what does it mean? It means that you have from one to several origins of value in one mechanism that defines some particular token function. So I took 10 of most used mechanisms on the market. So if you will try to analyze any token that you can find, I think the 95% chance you will find out one of them, or maybe two of them in one token. So, but of course they are quite big amount of them is 255 mechanisms in total, because it's just a combinatorics. We have 8 origins of value, so this is why we have 255 different mechanisms. So the value transfer is quite trivial. The work token is mainly used in infrastructure. Consensus, you all know that. Dividends, they are barely some examples, because everybody is afraid of regulation, because if you have a dividend token, it's very bad from the law point of view. But anyway, there are some tokens on the market. Representation is LP tokens, BRED, for example, etc. But if, for example, BRED will get some governance functionality, one day they will say, okay, if you mint some BRED and you lock it for 6 months, and during the 6 months you can influence the votings in order just to not make one new token for the voting. Of course, this representation will be enriched by the governance, of course. So there are discount token, governance tokens. Meta pattern is a pattern when you have several tokens, for example, on the contract, and you have one new token that can manage these other tokens as an index fund, for example, with the dividends or with the governance power, hedonic value and access. So I think I will briefly go through the examples. So this is an example of work token. So we have risk exposure, conditional action, and future cash flow. Quite simple one. So Filecoin is a good example for talking, but in reality it works differently. So I cannot share it here. But maybe you know the live peer. Somebody knows the live peer. It's decentralized video encoding network. So or PowerPool that I'm working in, Keeper network. So you have a token. You need you can lock this token for running a node. The node should sign the transactions, and if the transactions are signed properly, you get rewarded for this, and this reward are paid by the end users of the network who set up the tasks. So finally, you have a risk exposure because you lock a token to the node, you can be slashed. If you will make some misbehavior, you have a conditional action that you need to run a node and sign the transactions in order to get the reward, and you have a future cash flow paid by customers of the network if everything was done correctly. So it's quite simple. So for widespread mechanisms, so we have a value transfer. It's mainly the Bitcoin, Ethereum when it was proof of work version, because the only function of Ethereum in proof of work era was to send value from the users of the network to miners, right? You don't have any other use case. I mean, within the network, not in the applications built on top of it. So all the native cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Monero, also Link was used as pure value transfer token, and the basic attention token, I think, is quite known example of value transfer token. So work tokens are live peer, PowerPool, decentralized VPNs, decentralized RPCs, all this Web3 infrastructure. There are also some examples to that. So for the consensus, it can be a big discussion. I think I will left it to the questions. You all know consensus tokens. For the dividends, I, to be honest, found only liquidity for the LUSD. That has pure dividends without any governance, without anything else. So backed by another asset, the BRED, the liquid staking derivatives of Ethereum, stablecoins, etc. Discount tokens, they're mainly tokens of the centralized exchanges, because any discount should be funded by some margin. So if you provide discount, somebody pays for the discount, and mainly the big companies can pay for discount to get some loyal users. So some well-known examples are, BNB and all this, kind of exchange tokens, according to my knowledge. So the meta pattern, the good example of meta pattern is a convex finance token, because they have several tokens that they aggregated that you can vote using these tokens, which are locked in the convex finance and the protocol-owned tokens. Also, we made some of this stuff in PowerPool in the past. So with the for hedonic value, you know these CryptoPunks, Bird Tapes, and a lot of NFTs, but very funny example is Unisocks. Maybe not everyone knows about them, but it's very funny because it has 2 value capturing mechanisms behind it. It has hedonic value, but it also is backed by another asset, because you can redeem it for socks, theoretically. So it's a fun example that Unisocks are backed by socks. So also you have some access NFTs for the community, so it's also quite easy to understand. So also I want to demonstrate the example of BNB study here, because there's always a question, okay, you found 4 origins of value, but how you can distinguish, are these 4 origins of value in one big mechanism, or are there several different mechanisms in the implementation pattern? This is the main question. So you can make a graph, pick all these origins of value and understand how they are connected. So for example, you can see that the value transfer is not connected with the discounts. It's not connected with the conditional action. It's not connected with the risk exposure at all. And based on this graph, you can see that the value transfer is separately, the consensus is separately, and the discount is separately. the value capture mechanism of discount token, right? Because you still can pay use BNB for payments on Binance Exchange with some discount. So this is a example of like a relatively complex token to understand it properly. So I have some examples. So quite interesting ones. I think it's more for questions and for paper. So finally, this is a theory. I think it's quite interesting. And what I want to say, what is really important here, that root of all value lies in promoting some desirable agents behavior. And the origins of value are principal ways to promote them, to promote this behavior. So this is, I think, the cornerstone thing here. Because if you will get to any original value, you will see this. Because, for example, in the work token, we want users to run a node, we want users to send the transactions, we want users to, end users to pay for it. So every original value works to promote the desirable agents behavior. And in truly decentralized networks, our agents can do whatever they want. So in these origins of value and the proper token models, they structure the behavior in the right way to get all these mechanism design working properly and network going to the success and to the the network goals without any issues. So this is the key point here, I think. So what next I want to do with all of this? I want to make a periodic table of mechanisms and make the classification based on the dominant mechanism. Because, for example, in work token, the main is cash flow. I think this is the main motivation to run a nodes in general, or in dividend tokens, it's even the dividends. So I want to make a classification and make the easy navigation, all these mechanisms. I think it will be quite interesting. So I think that's it. Thank you a lot. So I want to thank the token engineering community. I was a very early member there, and they support me a lot with this idea to develop this theory. So it's a big thanks to them. They support me for years. And for PowerPool, they also funded this research and helped to make all this happen. So here is the QR code if you want to get the presentation, my Twitter if you want to drop some messages, ask something, describe some tokens, and also the original working draft of the paper, 37 pages, quite long, but there are much more details. Thank you, everybody.
Are there any questions?
With these mechanisms, have you, it seems like you've done some work in kind of identifying the most common, combinations of different things. I imagine, you said there's 255. I imagine a lot of those must be very silly combinations or something like that.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
Yes, yes. So these are 10 most used, but for example, I can share the example. So for example, you have a governance token. This is the original value number 3, right? In the governance, you have also original value number 8 because it's conditional action. You need to vote. If you never vote, you never can get any value from the governance. But at the same time, if you will add the value transfer, it means that the token gains value of the transfer. So it's like a bias, right? From one point of view, you need to hold it and vote all the time to get value, and from other point of view, you need to send it all the time and not hold it at all. So it's like two things that distract each other. So yes, there are some silly combinations. I think from these 255, maybe 15 or 20 will be really used ever, maybe even less, because just imagine if you will add all 8 of them into the one, and try to make it really bonded with each other, not just put it on a some playing cards on the table, but make the system from them. It's complicated, really.
Yeah, I imagine it could be a fun exercise to try and design tokens with silly combinations, but I don't know if you've done any work into thinking about what types of combinations are ideal for, I don't know, the commons or something like that, or for specific kind of social organizational structures that is compatible with different combinations of mechanisms.
Yes, it's very interesting for me, particularly. So what I want to give my paper to the ChatGPT and try to get some crazy ideas from it. But what is also important, so we have this generalized formula here, but I think for every ordinal value, we can get some rational formula. So for example, for the future cash flow, it's discounted future cash flow, right? It's what is used in traditional finance. For value transfer, it's this Fisher's equation or something like that. And I think that we can get a rational formula for every original value. And probably based on this formula, on understanding of the value dependence on some coordinates, we can get better combinations of them.
Okay, I think this leads very well to my presentation now, and also the last question, because, yeah, I mean, I can start presenting with the question, or I just start presenting, I don't know. But basically, yeah, I'm going to present a roadmap. It's a framework of projects, and it would like to be a research process to evaluate projects on different criteria. And one set of criteria is the technical functioning of the projects and economics. And that side is technical, and it's agnostic to the orientation of the project, no? Because it can be an oil company with a shit token, because the tokenomics is shit.
Of course, yeah.
But or it can be green energy cooperatives with a good token or bad token, okay? So
I think the bad token or good token is subjective, because I think it works in a way. You have a system, you have some goals and issues in the system. You integrate the token to solve some goals and issues. For example, the bread token was integrated in the bread chain to make an efficient mechanism for donations without donation. So it's a mechanism to acquire some value to the community without taking the whole, without taking out the entire value from the donators, right? So this is a quite smart way, I think so. So this bread, token model solves the particular problem: how to get some funding for the community, not taking the donations entirely from the users, right? And how to get them, in an on-chain way without relying on some centralized institutions. Because, for example, the selection of Aave pools is also very smart, because you cannot censor the Aave pool. You cannot lock funds. Even if some, capitalist guys will say, we need to kill this project, they cannot censor the whole Aave, because all deposits will be gone. It's a big problem. So it's a smart way to allocate the funds, I think. So yeah. And I think that if you have a system, you created a token. This token serves properly the system and allows it to grow, to fulfill its goals. It's a good token. If the whole idea of the system before the token was bad, was harmful for the society, it's not a responsibility of the token itself, right? Because the token design, it solves some task. The token itself is not the social idea or political movement, right? The token is a tool to achieve something. I think it works this way.
Sure. That was, yeah, you can pass this framework to again, I don't know, an oil company or whatever extractive business you have that we don't like.
Yeah.
But it can turn out that the tokenomics is excellent, no? It is very well designed and very efficient in the purpose that it's designed to do.
Yes.
But we also want to promote projects that don't just have a good tokenomics.
Of course, I think it's like every food can be a poison or a good for you, right? It's the same. So you can make a token for a bad project, based on the social values, right, or the impact on the society, or you can make a token for a good project. But the token itself is not wrong here.
Yeah.
The project is wrong, not a token.
Sure.
This is my opinion.
Sure. Yeah. I'm going to speak about that exactly. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Actually, also for Vasily, I don't know if you know this Mechanism Institute that just was launched by Ori. It's like a database of mechanisms for governance and funding. Yeah, because it's very new. It was like launched some months ago after Ori 5 years work in mapping and analyzing all kinds of mechanisms at school. And also, I got to know a friend that came here to the last event that launched this token economy canvas, which I don't know, it's different, but on the same line of your framework of evaluating the value generation model. Okay, and this is this nice presentation. That really was I mean, it's again, also this is a 4-5 years long project of mine. I mean, it is the underlying mission behind all my projects so far. And CCA is the first project that worked in trying to make this the basis of it, or the purpose. Because, yeah, so I can repeat it briefly. Let me check the time, so don't go out. Okay. Yeah, basically, the Commons Economy Roadmap, before it was called Commons Economy Framework, it's a map of the projects that we consider really interesting. And what does it mean, interesting? It means that they are working towards a post-capitalist economy. And here we can call it common-centric economy, cooperative economy, public goods infrastructure. That's the substance, then the wording can change. But at the same time, that they have an economic sustainability, a business model, so it's not something that can work maybe in the future in 20 years, but something that is projected there, but is already functioning now. And yeah, for these reasons, we came to the conclusion that, yeah, this will become an independent project. I mean, it will be the first research project of CCA, but it will become its own organizational unit, I hope, if we find the funding for it. And so there is this component of evaluating the content and the substance of the activity that the project does. Again, oil company, bad. Regenerative network of farmers, good. But also from the point of view of being very serious about the economics, financial, tokenomics side of it. So it makes total sense to plug into existing frameworks like yours and have a kind of pipelining. You take the project, okay, technical assessment, okay, and then political or Commons Economy Roadmap assessment, okay, and then you go. So very glad to speak more about how we can integrate. And then it becomes also kind of decentralized science approach. We plug all the frameworks, all the researchers, and so on. So, yeah, it's an infrastructure to accelerate post-capitalism because, so I was speaking with Monty yesterday, and they had plenty of conversation among the years. The problem with these kind of databases is that it's difficult to find the right focus because it can be too broad or too specific. And then if it's too broad, people are not going in there if it's not super good, but if you don't have the resources to maintain it super good, it doesn't work. If it's too specific, people are not interested enough. So for me, the main point is not much having a nice database, but having an economic model behind it that can support it. And I think it's quite doable. I mean, I don't understand why it is not being developed so far. If we take projects that we want to bring in database for a lot of reasons that we will now see, again, they are working, they are oriented in a post-capitalist direction, and we make them fund this framework in a way that the framework is not just, okay, I'm paying some research project of somebody and I get no returns on it, beyond the fact that I'm financing research. But I'm also getting visibility and marketing and also some serious evaluation of my work that, yeah, it's a feedback loop. So the feedback loop would be, yeah, that the more resources we find to fund the Commons Economy Roadmap with this communication infrastructure that now it can also be AI powered, meaning that we can ask we can generate more content, better content with AI or using less time, so it makes more sense economically. And the projects that generate visibility, that generate more resources for the project, and more resources to the roadmap, and so on. Yeah. So it will start centralized because in our experience so far, when people are like, yeah, this should be open, let's do it together, and then you do it open, nobody gives any input, and you're like, okay, then I wasted a lot of resources and time to try to make it decentralized, but there is no interest. So we think that the first year or so will be centralized. And then if there is feedback from the community and there is really an interest, of course, we can. If it's not working, if we're not decentralizing it, it doesn't make sense. So if it works, we decentralize it. If not, we close it. Okay, probably. Yeah, and also I like the idea of these communication channels in which if you get to know the roadmap in some way in your social media or because somebody tell you, you also get in contact with the network of spaces that are doing events with these projects and with, I know, professionals with trends that you may not know. So we just create this huge surface of onboarding for people so that if they get in any kind of the surface, they get into all the ecosystem. What is different? What we think it will be something like this in the sense of the main criteria, just to simplify the huge amount of criteria that you could have in this framework. That's the main problem, no? It cannot be too broad, it cannot be too specific. One is the economic sense of the project. So again, having some frameworks for evaluating the functioning of the projects beyond what they do in terms of content or concrete activity. And then a set of criteria to evaluate if the project is non-extractive, regenerative, democratic, and so on. So all the things that make it a post-capitalist project. And we could speak more about it, meaning that we don't want to be purists, so it's not like that. It's not like you have to have this set of criteria or you're out, but it's more like the more criteria you have, the better, and the roadmap can show you how can you progressively implement more elements in your functioning to become more and more post-capitalist, while maintaining your economic model alive. And then the third criteria that could make it interesting also in terms of, I don't know, investors looking for nice investments or sheer innovation is the commons edge, meaning that if these projects are both post-capitalist oriented and working in the market, there is something innovative about what they're doing. So yeah, the roadmap, when you have the explanation of why this project is in the roadmap, you also find an explanation of why it's innovative. So it can also be a pool of ideas for all the other projects to get inspired from. And I wanted to do a couple of examples, but I don't know if there is time. Yeah. Let me see. Okay. Yeah, for example, I want to speak about these two sponsors of this event. Etikap is a very good example. It's one of the first projects that I really see in the roadmap because it makes total sense economically. They survived all the crypto winters. They have this simple model of, the concept is easy, that you move credit, you give credit to the farmers in Latin America where credit cost is very high, here is very low, so you do the bridge between the two, but without the intermediaries of the banks. So you use crypto, and it's not mine. Yeah, so economically it makes total sense. It solves a real need and problem, which is the credit cost gap. And it doesn't even look like so post-capitalist because in the end it's just an investment protocol or platform or whatever. But then if you look at what they do among all these activities and all the stakeholders they touch and engage with, it's very post-capitalist because they are not extractive toward any of the stakeholders. They generate value for all the stakeholders involved. And they are in this direction of getting more decentralized governance, and they want to create a DAO. And the object of what they do is very regenerative because they literally fund regenerative agriculture. And in terms of innovation, the compensation mechanism that they have in background to maintain all the infrastructure is very, very complex. And yeah, it's one of the first of its kind in this way. And yeah, Chain, at the same time, very promising project for Postcapitalism because they found a way to fund themselves and to plug into the market, but at the same time, they have this very special thing of the infrastructure giving real governance power and real power only to the productive members of the network. I mean, we don't have to get in details here, but yeah, they have a big community, they have their own different revenue streams, and they are post-capitalist in direction because they want to create a distributed infrastructure. And yeah, it's innovative because yeah, it's literally a new paradigm, so Blockchain, you can be sure with that. Yeah, I mean, that's it. We started discussing with Monty because ReFi DAO or people in ReFi DAO like you wants to create this knowledge graph of experts and projects in the network. And I'm very open to not do the project in this way, not develop the project in this way, but to change name or whatever if I can work with more people and more resources towards the same goal. So maybe we can do a workshop this afternoon or whenever to.
Let's do a workshop this afternoon. We can start mapping.
Yeah.
Fit into it.
Yeah. So you will know more about this project soon because we will start marketing it and will become its own unit with its own social media and so on. I think that's it. We created a Telegram channel in the group of this event if you want to join. Thank you for listening. Any question? Is that a microphone?
So I understand the intent and the spirit that this project captures, but I don't know if at some stage of the talk I got a little bit lost, but I am having trouble trying to understand its surface area. Like, how can I engage with it? Like, if I'm a project, if I'm an individual, how do I engage with it? How do I participate or interact with this project?
Yeah. If you are a project that is pushing forward post-capitalism, I think you are. So, there will be a selection process. You can apply to it, or we come to you because you are very interesting and we want you in the roadmap. And we go through the different criteria of evaluation of the project. And if the project is legit according to this criteria, you get into the roadmap. And so it will be like, sorry, it will be more concrete. It will be a website when you can see the projects, but also a social media plan that actively promotes the projects. And so I don't know which will be the form of the projects to contribute to the financing, but it could be, I don't know, you destinate 0.1% of your revenues to the framework, to the roadmap, and that's your contribution. And then you get marketing, and you get visibilized into this database, and you can be involved with other projects in the roadmap analysis. Did I answer? Because to me it's clear, but maybe it's not clear.
Yeah, so it's basically joining a network in a way, and getting these benefits that you just mentioned about marketing visibility, and is there something around building collaboration across projects that is implicit in this, since it's a commons framed project?
Yeah. The point is that in the roadmap, you have existing projects, but you also can kind of see what is missing, because maybe I didn't explain it. I went too fast, but let me go to it a second. Is structured according to different layers. and different functions. So your project is also positioned in a specific layer and function, so people can make a sense of the economy. So, like this is, I don't know, the infrastructure for cooperatives in agriculture to do this specific thing. And you can also, yeah, it makes more visible to see how to collaborate, how to avoid duplicating efforts, and so on. But the basic function is a promotion machine for projects that are working well. Yeah, so that's it's not like we don't offer you 1,000 of things. It's just you're a good project. Yeah, we certify you. You get promoted, and the idea is that if the framework of evaluation is recognized as legit by people, then projects are incentivized to go through the process to show to their audience, oh, we have been approved in the Commons Economy Roadmap, we are building the Commons Economy.
So it's like a post-capitalist certification badge program.
Yeah, another interesting point, just 10 seconds, is that we didn't want to make it too rigorous, meaning because you can go in whatever depth you want, no? To make scientifically rigorous assessment of a project according to economics, the ethical considerations and whatever. We don't want to go too much into that because we think it's quite easy to understand if a project is legit or not. It requires some expert knowledge, some structured process, but we shouldn't take 2 months to assess that the project is okay, no? So that's the idea of having a good amount of expert knowledge, but also a very efficient and light process to onboard the project on top. Yeah, so, yeah, basically.
One of the functions that I also see is how you make it more of a kind of ecosystem and community as well. Yeah. About how you make it like more of an ecosystem and community. So by mapping out the space, you're then able to facilitate more connections within the space. And so it's kind of like a matchmaking and discoverability kind of process of you can see other value-aligned projects and the people working for those, and then work to make more interconnections between that to make a more cohesive whole. And you kind of get the potential for this like economy of scope where each one can specialize maybe on a piece of the puzzle and then interoperate and collaborate. But in order to do that and not just each project try and build their own thing, that you need to know what other people are working on, what people are doing, and that allows you to coordinate more effectively. So it's really like an intelligence tool, I guess, that allows us to coordinate building towards the commons economy more effectively, or the refi economy. And the kind of infrastructure that I'm trying to build is how we create multiple like maps of these that then also all connect together. The data can be maintained by different, so the Commons Hub can maintain a database, refi DAO is maintaining a database, and all the local nodes are maintaining different databases, but actually an infrastructure that allows them to sync all up to global to local in a way that keeps it continually maintained. So it's not an easy thing to do, but
Thank you. Last comment, just to make it more interesting, because I forgot this part, but it's actually one of the inspiring elements. The point is also to make the people see the emerging economy, literally, because the economy we want is being built by this project, and you can go into the project. But also, if you want to invest, or if you want to promote this economy, the second step, I mean, beyond the supporting the single projects or the roadmap, it would be amazing if this brings to the development of a fund or investment fund in which it's a basket of all the projects, tokens or stocks or whatever, so that you have a way to invest in post-capitalism, literally, by supporting
like
this distributed network of projects that they cannot fail all at the same time. We integrate only projects that have a business model and that they are working, and not just like a bunch of shitcoin projects or projects without a model, so that in a second moment, it actually can become a source of aggregated, stable, maybe little revenues, but sure revenues, because they cannot fail all at the same time. They are working, they are growing, they are the intersection of new trends, so would be like an investment thesis as well for the commons economy. Other questions?
I want to riff on what Monty said.
Sure.
It's good to have a distinction between a more passive, easily accessible, more decentralized component and an active one based on expertise. And distinguish them as different roles requiring different kind of work, because they can be the database and the interconnections as mapped as a static product, which can we can consult in terms in order to see which projects are part of the network and what interconnections can be made, but to actually be able to see complementarities between two projects and actually make them enter into a partnership, it needs active work. We cannot expect this to happen by itself because people have access to a map. So I think this also can be kind of like a pitch for business model based on some active work of the participants that are have the expertise, let's say, inside the project. So maybe it's like consultancy model. I don't know what it would
that's
look
what
like.
we thought as well. We will create a
that.
company called the Commons Agency, and the goal of this company is to help the ecosystems, the emerging ecosystems, to grow. And by this I mean the CCA and the Commons Hub at the moment. But you're welcome to join the network. And in a second moment also, being the active connector between projects. So far the problem was that, in theory it works, but then in practice it's a bit more complicated, but sure. Yeah. It's quite a lot of active work. Okay, I think we can go to the coffee break. And after that, we have discussion on Gitcoin and Shell, public goods funding, delicatesse. So I hope you're excited about that, and thank you for listening. We are starting. I mean, or you move or you come here, but yeah, you choose. Okay. We do maybe a last round of calling, and we can start. Take a seat. We're starting. Matthew. It will be a fishbowl, so it will work that we come here, take the mic, and we discuss, and then you go away after a bit, and somebody comes in. We follow the flow of the discussion, and we'll try to moderate. So that's it.
So when you come in with the mic, you have to address what was just said.
Ideally, yeah, yeah.
I think there's different ways of doing the fishbowls.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, should we start? Are you ready? Okay. Can you call Pablo that he wanted to say stuff? Okay. So it's in the main in the yeah. Okay, so who knows what we are talking about? The partnership between Gitcoin and Shell? Okay, so basically for the others, it was announced that Gitcoin, which is now DAO, so it's decentralized, have established a partnership on with Shell, one of the biggest oil companies that you surely know. And the deal is not 100% clear now. I mean, they didn't disclose the details, but there will be a partnership related to the funding of open source technologies for energy management, of course, because Shell works on that. I think it's an interesting debate. Very curious to know what you all think about this, because at the first sight, it seems disgusting that we are partnering with this huge corporation that literally destroyed the planet with all the others oil corporations. But at the same time, I think that if we want to really have resources to change the system, the main stakeholders of the past system will inevitably fund it in some way, even against their agendas, okay? And in this specific case, it's interesting because given that Gitcoin is a decentralized protocol for public fundings, and the partnership does not involve that we have to do something. I don't know. It's not clear what the details are, but it's more around the funding on open source technologies on energy. So, for example, I think it's not such a bad partnership. I'm ready to change my idea today. But yeah, I think we should think more and do more of these strategic partnerships with Satan to have more resources to fund the commons. But of course, it's very important how the partnership actually is. No? That's the whole point. Unfortunately, we cannot speak about the details because we don't have them. But yeah, I think we can discuss about the thing in general, because I spoke with somebody here and different opinions. Who wants to start? It's a fishbowl, so we come here, discuss, and you go away, somebody comes in. Yeah, come. Who likes this partnership? Please. And the Blockchain Socialist, where's your standing? That's every day. Okay, who wants to start? I think the okay.
I'd like to offer the community angry. Right, and also for me, I'd like to offer looking at it through the lens of power. You have a small organization, Bitcoin, a large organization, Shell, and they're doing a deal together, and you can be sure that Shell is going to get more out of it than Bitcoin. And insofar as the relationship is a compromise, Shell is going to move less than Gitcoin. So Gitcoin has to move towards Shell and offer them greenwashing services in exchange for money. And Shell is really looking for the cheapest bidder that will offer them high quality greenwashing services. And so in this case, Gitcoin offered the cheapest high quality greenwashing services to Shell. And I think if we want to build power in this respect, we have to put the price up at the very least. And that means no organization should be aspiring to offer the cheapest greenwashing services. And there are circumstances in which you can accept money without dirtying yourself, but that means not promoting the name of Shell, not doing their greenwashing. And my assessment of the whole thing, because I don't want to go on and on about it, as I did in my tweets, my assessment of the whole thing is that Shell would have got more out of this than the regenerative movement. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it. And so we could probably account for a net negative for regenerative finance as a result of this deal. And it's very, very difficult to reject money, but other people could discuss that. I've had enough. Just need to have some ethics. This is fucking bullshit. Seriously. Who's next?
I'll give the counter.
I just want to make sure that everybody understands the mechanism of the fishbowl. There wasn't explained very clearly. Please raise your hand if you're familiar with the fishbowl format. Cool. Not that great. So, on the stage, you've got 4 open seats, right? How to fishbowl. On stage at the front of the room, you got 4 open seats, right? One of them is always empty, right? So the person who's been on stage longest, if I go and I sit down here, since Matthew just spoke, he spoke the most. You would have to get up and leave, right? So that creates the empty seat that then somebody else can come in. So this is how we basically queue in line for the conversation, right? And you kick the person who's been up here the longest out. But that means it is an open discussion. So Yellow, you want to come in, take this seat, bring your comments on stage. Perfect. That's what this session is designed for, is to be like everybody can hop in.
And you continue the conversation. You don't change the subject if possible.
That's, yeah. Yeah.
You can say for more than one comment, no? That may be a thing.
Well, there always needs to be an empty seat, and as soon as somebody comes and takes the empty seat, whoever's been on stage longest has to go back into the audience. Cool? Excellent. I'll pass that.
So I think you're framing this as Shell versus the regeneration movement. And I'm a little unclear why you think they're against the regeneration movement as opposed to, like you said, just greenwashing their money. And I really don't see a problem with them greenwashing their money through a vehicle like this that is going to provide an immense amount of value to people in the bear market right now struggling for capital.
Yeah. If I get up, so then somebody else can come back, right? Yeah. Like, holy fuck, I'm triggered by this. Oh my god, how dare you? Once I had a reunion with some people from mathematics, and like two of these friends were like, oh yeah, we now work at Shell. I'm like, yo, what? You're doing what? They're like, yeah, super interesting. Like, I'm working on harmonic oscillations on a sphere. Oh, you're helping Shell find oil, right? No, yeah, I mean, no, it's used for all, like, no, fucking bullshit. Like, get your shit together and understand that what has Shell done in the past 80 years? It's a Dutch company, right? Like, the Dutch king, as far as I'm concerned or understand, has shares in this, the Dutch royal family. Like, whoa. And they know for all these years, like, what the fuck they're doing, all the damage. And then where, like, greenwashing what? Which thing? Like, show me what regenerative energy. When you drill an oil field, it's like, imagine you make a tiny hole through the earth, through high pressure oil, and once the hole is there, it's coming out, and it has to come out. We don't have the technology to close these holes. That's this bullshit that happened with Deepwater Horizon. Like, you take, I don't know how much atmosphere, there's a whole layer of earth pressing on it. So every drilled oil hole is gonna have to be emptied. So when they're telling you like green energy transition, fuck you, seriously. So that's like, yeah, man, it's like you look at this, like did that corona, like, oh yeah, lots of people dying, okay, cool. What do other people die from? Well, respiration problems, heart failure. Oh, what's the biggest industries? Well, it's like military industrial, it's like alcoholic and tobacco. These are the biggest ones, like oil, military industrial, fossil, that's it. So it's that super clear, and then like, yeah, oh, we make like eco-fuel. Like, seriously, get the fuck out. And the fact that people, like, if you're a Gitcoin project and you even consider taking money from these people, you need to get your ethics straight. That's my opinion. This is like why I'm really super, yeah, I don't believe, and if this is your ethics, then don't do the project at all. You're not helping, in my opinion. Like, I don't want to offend anyone, but I think it's super fucked up.
You don't think they're helping?
No, in which sense? Like, you said you think it's useful to take money. Imagine, like you're poor, right? You need 10 bucks for whatever, weed, food, doesn't matter. So I give you 10 bucks. Maybe I was working in the field picking cotton for 2 weeks to give you the 10 bucks, or I went to some old lady and went like, hey, thanks. Bam. Take the wallet, 10 bucks, here's your 10 bucks. You think you just got 10 bucks, right? But the one 10 bucks involved getting an old lady smacked down, and the other one involved me like putting in a lot of labor. Do you understand?
Yeah, but you're not offering, you can't offer the quantity of dollars that Shell is able to provide. Like, I mean, you're saying that.
How do you know that?
I mean, the value is they have $40 billion. The crypto market as a whole is like that's like what Bitcoin's net cap is right now, 40 billion. That
No.
So the amount, surely they have a lot of money, but how did they obtain it, right? They took our clean air and all that shit and they monetized it and turned it into stuff. And now you're thinking, like, oh yeah, I'll take it back from you. It's like, no, go fuck yourself. I don't need your oil. Go away. I don't need your money. Like, have a stance.
When we're,
Okay.
It's to Josh. You're still on. Julio's still on. You leave.
you have more to say, yeah. Yeah, but I think it's super telling, like the kind of the justification is like, well, where do we get this capital from? Like it is I think it comes from a legitimate problem that, oh, the people who want to do regeneration or do things that are basically not profitable under capitalism need to receive money from somewhere because you live within capitalism. So like there's not an easy answer to that, and I get that. But I think like considering that it's fucking Shell and they're gigantic and they have like just the amount of damage that they've done, like I mean it's like you know, if you truly believe in like the dangers of climate change that are coming and like potential apocalyptic scenarios, and like these people are like beyond like any amount of evil we can really like quantify the amount of death and destruction that like one that they've probably already done and probably are responsible for going into the future. So it's like very
But I think we know that they are evil now. We don't have to argue so much about it. That's not the point of the discussion.
Just like one thing, like when I heard this, I realized like what the hell is wrong with these people? So it turns out when you run these oil pipelines through small villages, people think you can tap this oil by drilling a hole in it. That's not the way it works. Too much pressure, so a flame comes out the size of the whole village times 4. Whole village blasted away. And this happens regularly. So there's a team that I know, someone who worked there, who lives a very nice life in a has a house with a pool and everything, and they're like shielded. And they have a team that is basically like greenwashing this thing. So yes, every now and then a whole village is blasted off the map because one of these pipelines like makes a flame, but then immediately somebody comes in to clean up. And when you have such a business unit inside your company, I think you need to reconsider like what the fuck you're doing and how you're getting your money. You see? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like the offer I think they matched was 100K in fundings from what I understood, which is like, of course, a fraction.
Is it 100K or in total?
Whatever. That's, you know, their profit is 40 billion, so like this is like a, you know, a drop in the bucket. So I mean, I think I agree with Matthew. This is like, it's very cheap. Like this is like the cheapest they could spend for essentially reputation washing. And I think the argument is it's not about necessarily like, oh well, we know that they're evil and we're taking their money. It's like, this is happening in a public stage. Like other people are watching this and like, oh, we don't need to do these like crazy climate protests because Shell is investing in like green solutions. So Extinction Rebellion, stop, what are you guys doing? Like Shell is doing good. I think there is this like, yeah, it moves the narrative away from like what is actually necessary because like, I don't know, for me, I'm sorry, but like we have to disrespect private property rights of like these giant companies. We have to disrespect it. And we can't like just allow, just because, oh, they made this money themselves legally through whatever the system, does not legitimize the acts that they're doing in order to like extract that wealth. And I think we shouldn't just like bow down to them to be like, oh yeah, thanks you for like some of the pennies that you've given. Like it's kind of like I don't know, in my view, like the fact that we have a whole system and like industry for charity and philanthropy, like is just like, it shows that the system is not working. Like why should we depend on like the niceness of some billionaire or some giant corporation whenever we can just build a system that doesn't require their existence? And I think that's the direction that I would personally rather go to. I think most people would. I don't know. Then it would be like, begging Shell for scraps, because 100K is like, that's nothing. That's really nothing. Like if if they were offering, like, I don't know, like a huge chunk of their profits for something like this, then maybe, like, I don't know, I expect more than 6 figures though, way more than 6 figures.
Okay, I actually want to go on this because you touched many points that I would like to touch. First of all,
Can I actually just add like one quick point and I'll leave and you guys can stay? No, I just wanted to say that in the last year, they spent 100 million on advertising on digital, print, and national TV. So 100 million in advertising is what they spent for, not like the money of advertising is just going to enrich the corporations that are also providing advertising space for them. So thinking that this 100K is assisting the projects is not taking into consideration that this was probably the cheapest advertising that they ever got. Yeah.
Another thing I think not too many people know, I'm not sure if you knew that in the Geneva Convention, ecocide was supposed to be a thing. So like genocide, like destroying of the ecosystems. And it's not in there. And three countries made sure it wasn't. Was it the USA? The USA, there you go. Second one. Was it the UK? The UK. Third one? Close? The Netherlands, exactly. So, gee, I see a correlation, right? And if you already know this for this long, I mean, yeah, you should just be kicked out of class. You didn't demonstrate that you learned anything, and for many, many years, you're like actively investing in, deceiving the public, spreading propaganda. In fact, like they do things that are legal, but it's only because they run a lobbyist team. And this is not just Shell. This is like every big company does it. They run lobbyists to change the law to be in their favor. Or, similar example, look at Uber. They do something that's kind of illegal. Then they keep doing it for a while, and at some point they're like, oh, no, please regulate it, please, please. In fact, no, maybe you should listen to us to make the rules because we've been doing this for a while, we know how it is. So now the rules are in your favor, and all your competitors have to now do the same thing you're doing because you're the one setting the rules. Yeah, like if this is the game, you might as well not play.
Okay. I would like to... so first of all, are we really helping Shell with this visibility that we are giving them? I mean, do they need more visibility, or do people seeing it? How many people are thinking, oh, then they are green? If they see a partnership, or is like greenwashing? I don't know. That's an open question. To me, that when you mentioned like activists and so on, it reminded me that my point in having this discussion is the main point of post-capitalism strategy to me, because we are a post-capitalist and not anti-capitalist, because we engage in a interesting way with existing capitalism, and I think that so far most of us in our work we get funding directly or indirectly by huge capitalists or things that capitalists are funding. For example, I don't know. Also, Refi is mostly funded by Zero, which is funded by big venture capitalists, which is the same shit. I mean, it's not. I mean, of course, this is the worst shit that we have on the plate, but there is a lot of kinds of shit, and that where do we put the what is the acceptability of the shit taste or size or whatever? And I think that now I'm getting against this still again because I'm remembering why they are so shitty, but at the same time, also in terms of having this ecosystemic approach to system change, meaning that there are different categories of agents and groups that are doing different things. So the activists will do activist work that is very important. The lobbyists will do lobbyist work, which is very important. The technical layer, that is us, that is Gitcoin, which is funding open source technologies. I mean, I don't see why they shouldn't get funding that is meant to fund open source energy technologies. When, I mean, in any case, somebody else is taking it. It's a technical infrastructure level. Yeah, I think it makes sense because we are not like, this is, to me, is not thinking in complexity terms, thinking that just because one entity is bad, then we don't have to touch it. But especially if it's a big entities, there will be surely ways in which we have to engage with it, or especially if we can take resources out of them. And regarding what Matthew said, that they take more out of us than that vice versa. I mean, again, especially because it's a huge corporation and they spent 100 millions in marketing, do you think that not giving them 300K worth of visibility is making any difference to them? I don't think so. And to us, 300K is a big difference. So yeah, I think it's complex.
I mean, a question I would pose would be, did you walk here? I mean, if you use transportation, in a sense, you are transportation that is not completely green, you are supporting these companies. So where do you really draw the line on where you're willing to support these companies and where you're not willing to support these companies? But I mean, then don't use cars if you don't want to support them. How did you get here? Yeah, but you don't because it's not efficient, and they've created it's not an option. They've created a society where we kind of have to support them if you want to. I'll move in a second. But we support these companies every day in things that we don't even know. The food that we eat are just plowed by tractors that use their gas. Why can't we take funding from them to fund projects that are actually going to do good for the world?
I guess I wanted to explore just more broadly how we think about interacting with actors, with bad actors when we're facing like existential challenges or like, you know, thinking about the climate crisis. How do we move forward? Under what conditions do we think it would have been acceptable to accept this funding? And yeah, how do we move forward with technologies and solutions, knowing that maybe it can't all be sourced ideally? Or just providing context of like other examples of kind of capture like this.
Do you have a direct response to that? No. Because I just wanted to point out the paradox here, which is if Shell is putting money on this, it's because it benefits them. And the paradox here is if refi projects take this money from them, then is it going to be more beneficiary as a whole by taking this money and putting these drops into these projects, or will this investment that Shell is doing cause more harm? Not clear, Julio? So if Shell benefits from this and they're going to use whatever benefit they get from having put this money into, so what they get out of it will cause more harm than what the money
will help fix through refi projects? Just a lingering question.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, if this is only 100K and we're talking about greenwashing and we're talking about very, very cheap advertising for Shell, then maybe what we need to do is, if we don't agree with it, stop broadcasting it, stop retweeting it, keep the conversation going, but keep it private. Turn off the live stream, because we're giving Shell more exposure through doing this.
So my line of thought was going in the opposite direction, which is possibly the greater value to Gitcoin in this situation is mainstream publicity. We're really raising awareness of Gitcoin if we can speak loudly about this controversy.
But in what way? Just mainstream publicity by itself? It can be just like infamy. It can be like, yeah, there's this saying about like bad publicity is good publicity, but this is very bad publicity. And we have to think not only of the dynamics of mimetic spread out there in the world and of influence, but of signaling. Because this is a kind of signaling. And what it signals is, it goes out in the wild, but it does the same kind of signaling that all this crypto bros deeds and like behavior has been doing in crypto. And now it's not legitimate. Crypto is mainstream. Yes, we've reached that point, but it's frustrating because we are alienated, basically. The people who want to do the good work using these infrastructures, crypto-based infrastructures, are now alienated. We are alienated. We cannot we cannot talk about our own concerns because it has already been polluted by the signaling of this exploitative digital behavior that we already wanted to basically dispel.
Perhaps this creates an opportunity for the next iteration of Gitcoin where you're able to blacklist funders. And then that's something worth speaking loudly about as well.
Anybody has any ideas on that?
In my opinion, the most interesting discussion that came from this whole controversy was some people were advocating for the neutrality of these platforms and, oh, if we want to build tech that is neutral, multiple people could build on it, or is it neutral, or how is the stance we want to take on ethics, and then that goes into the governance and all of the token holders of Gitcoin and the project users of Gitcoin that weren't being contemplated in this decision. So there was a very poor advice process for how this took place and how people got stressed about it later, which is like a fundamental governance process because they had a guild or like an interest group that could take some sort of like autonomous decisions because that interest group had been voted to exist. So the autonomy they had came to be overriding the autonomy of the collective or what people believed. So this was a decision that should have had more input and it didn't receive more input. And maybe that's the conversation that can be constructive for us, like how are we managing those tools and those grants that everybody's benefiting or not from, and how can we make it better, and what is does neutrality even exist?
So you said that it was not voted in the DAO, this partnership.
No, it was decided by this interest group. And it wasn't even posted publicly in the forum before it happened, also for discussion.
This is a very interesting ethical conversation, and I'm super interested in taking this even like a step wider. For context, I work at Open Collective, and we have conversations like this often within the company. We accept funding from a wide range of people, including Facebook, Google. We have a lot of gambling groups that give to a lot of our open source software projects. And at Open Collective, we like to say that we are not a neutral platform. But it does come to a point where it's like these groups are needing funding. So I'm super interested in, the ethical dilemma of this in all realms.
How do you manage the ethical dilemma of the collective?
At the moment, we accept a lot of that funding, and we haven't put any kind of blanket terms against a lot of the collectives because they ultimately attract that funding. But it doesn't feel right for me at times, especially the gambling groups. Like, I don't believe that it's okay to be promoted, because they get links, that's why they give the money. And it doesn't feel good, but yeah.
There's the difference between a strategy in terms of funding and sustaining the project and a strategy in terms of publicity. And these are both the case here. And I think we're focusing too much on the aspect of funding, and we see this as a project, as a partnership in terms of funding, but it's mostly a project about partnership about publicity. And we've also talked about this, but I think we are obscuring the fact that this is not about Gitcoin. Yeah. Hmm? Yeah, I'll leave it at that. I'd like more time to articulate that, so.
I think it's important to point out, right, that we live in a time in history when we have some of the greatest concentration of wealth that humanity's ever seen. I mean, I don't know all of history and all of the Gini coefficients that go back thousands of years, but we live in a time of the hyper-concentration of wealth. Most of that hyper-concentrated wealth has been accumulated through through dirty practices, selling bad products like oil, and that what matters now is getting resources into regeneration, right? And if you look at, that concentration of wealth as a percentage of all the wealth that's accessible, at some point we need that wealth to move from the dirty economy into the regenerative economy. So take their money, but don't give them control, right? That's what it's really about here, is do they have control, right? So if they're giving money and it's grant funds and they can't come and lord anything over you or apply any kind of leverage to direct what you're doing with it, then take their money, and if they come back asking for something, tell them to get fucked.
That's...
No, that's not how this works. You sit down.
So you just take their money and you say, okay, you have no say over like this exact donation. And like maybe we announce it on Twitter, you get some free advertising or not. But I would say the same idea as like over Unity, grass farming kind of thing. It's like, oh, like, hey, now we're the biggest thing in the world. You want on our platform, you want exposure? Cool, you can do it if, and then we put other conditions like, by the end of the 5 years, you're going to reduce this or that. You're going to do all these funds. Like, turn it around. Make them our little like, you do what we say now because we, like, you have to give a good example. In my opinion, like, put the ethical example. Keep your stance. It's like, oh, you want to work with us? Nice. But now these are the conditions. You cannot just willy-nilly, over here you plant some trees, and over there you're just burning up the fucking nitrate delta. Like, that's not how it works, because it doesn't, like, dweilen met de kraan open is how we say in the Netherlands. It's like cleaning the floor while the tap's still running. Yeah, it's, okay, anyway.
Yeah, I think it's the question of control of the funds is really, really fundamental here. My opinion is that this is generally just net negative in the sense that it portrays Shell as a potential part of the solution, which I just find utterly ridiculous. And I think that's the image damage that this is doing. But in terms of who controls the funds, right? Like if this is really no strings attached, that is a very different situation, right? Because if we're talking about effective climate action, I don't know, there's like very strategic sabotage of oil infrastructure that's extremely effective. I would like to see them funding some sabotage of infrastructure. That would be great. Amazing, right? And if it's a joke, can we, if we can use the ridiculous little amount of money they gave to sabotage some Shell infrastructure, then I would, no, yeah, like, okay, then that's no strings attached money and that's effective climate action, and then I would respect their contribution. But I also think it's ridiculous in terms of the amount of money. I read a tweet of someone saying, if this was a serious thing, the amount of money they should be giving should be in the realm of reparations, of like war reparations. Like, we're talking billions of dollars here, right? Everything else is just ridiculous, portrays them as part of the solution, which they are not, and I don't believe it's strings attached in any case. So yeah, I just think this is stupid and ridiculous.
Thank you, Pablo. Yeah, it's a chance, and I'm glad we're doing this because this is an opportunity to, and I don't know any of the specifics of this partnership, but it's a chance for us to sit with this and talk about something that is really important, because I think we all agree that it makes, well, I assume, like in the coming decade, it makes sense to move money or monetary energy from the old system into the new one. But one thought is just, after all these years, we can compare it to a relationship between two human beings. When is trust, any kind of trust, established after an abusive relationship over a lifetime or multiple lifetimes? So I agree, it's way too cheap and it's way too fast. And I think it says a lot about this naivete that is a part of the cryptosphere. Another way of seeing it is like, there's still a lot of, oh, when will we be accepted by the system? Or like this insane system that has dominated us for so many years. There's still a wish to be accepted. And I think it's very, very naive. Not this collaboration, room for collaboration, of course. But these players, whether it's the central banks or Shell, they are way, way, way ahead of the majority of the people that are in the cryptosphere, as I see it. So I think we have to sit with it and talk about it like we're doing now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the tricky thing is that we're having a conversation as if it's about Shell and if it's about Gitcoin, because that's the thing that has surfaced the conversation. But it's kind of like what Yellow was talking about earlier about, you know, did you just roll the old lady for the money that you are using, or, you know, like our system, the monetary system, is inherently sociopathic. It purposely abstracts away the fabric of relationship and reduces it down to one-dimensional units. And we, in the cryptosphere, have replicated that exact pattern. And to think that we're going to get different behaviors when we are creating essentially sociopathic tokens. Sorry, maybe I should clarify what I mean by sociopathic. Disregarding of consequences on others, right? Like, that's what makes it sociopathic. A sociopath doesn't particularly regard the consequences they have on others. Money makes it inherently that way. When you are taking money, you have no idea what consequences were tied up in that. So the only way that we actually change that fabric is to, you know, this is where the weird currency design stuff that I was going, where we start getting constellations of currencies that actually work together and tie deeper into other levels of relationship. We don't get that just from gambling chips. We don't get that just from tradable tokens. And right now, the whole cryptosphere is focused primarily on speculative currencies, gambling chips. And to think that we're going to get any behavior out of that different is a little bit crazy. And we want to, like, we want the regen projects building on chains with speculative tokens, powered by speculative tokens, to be something other than greenwashing. We want it to build new patterns and relationships. We want Gitcoin to build new patterns because we like the things that it's funding. We like that it's bringing resources to other spaces that are under-resourced, right? And so then it pisses us off when we have this particular instance of the sociopathy showing up, and then it's good because now we actually get to talk about the relationships that we can't normally see or be responsible for, and how are we actually going to weave those into our systems. Because personally, I would call for something much, with much greater dimensionality than blockchains provide us, than tokens, tradable tokens provide us at the moment.
Thank you. Actually, I have a question for you because at the time, Holochain got a very meaningful amount of funding by launching a token. And so in a way, you engage with this dimensionality of money, and what were your ethical considerations at the time in this sense?
I want to make sure we're not taking this too far off track, but...
No. I mean, Holochain has a model of funding which is not related on... It's not just a token, more money to the token holders. It's not like that. But they used token fundraise in the past to get a lot of funding. So, yeah.
So Holochain doesn't have a token, but the Holo Hosting Network does. And we did an ICO for the Holo Hosting Network. And there is a blog post that I did, if you want to search for it, about doing an ethical ICO, like what it takes to actually put boundaries in place to keep whales from just snatching up the token and manipulating things and that kind of stuff. The problem is also for us now, many years have passed, and you know, our token is a little bit idle at the moment because it's for the Holo Hosting Network and we still haven't launched the damn Holo Hosting Network. So, and I'm not here to give financial advice on token management. I would say actually almost everybody in our company kind of sucks at the speculative markets. It's not our focus. But what we did do was make sure that we had no obligations to venture capital. No, like even the angels that were like values aligned angels that funded things, we cashed them out with the ICO. So it's completely held by the pre-sale of hosting credits, basically. And so and that opens a whole other can of worms because now, you know, we have all the when Moon, when Lambo, and all the people that get into it for the speculative reasons, we've tried to be careful not to market to those people, but we're not the only ones who've sold holofuel. So like pretty much everybody who bought hot in Turkey was sort of scammed into it by a pump and dump scheme, and the Turkish people tend to be angry with us because they bought it from somebody who was pumping it. This is what I mean, though, by, yes, we did an ERC20 token for expediency, and therefore we bought into all the same limitations and challenges of a speculative token until we launch the whole hosting network and can swap it. I would do it again as a community funding mechanism, yes. I'm not sure I don't really regret much about how we did the ICO. I do have some regrets about some decisions that have caused the long timelines. But
so this is a branch off from the sociopathic qualities in tokens. And first I would like to bridge of, while it's branching off, why is it still relevant to the conversation of the event with the shell? And why I would say it's relevant is because this kind of situations like the shell bring ethics in a certain way in this discussion, which is useful. But I think we, at the same time, have to enhance significantly how do we bring the structural ethics and the tendencies these structures create and ethical questions towards them, because that area is at least equally important, if not more important. So to turn this into a little bit of a practical example, because otherwise I'm too abstract. So if we think of games, and there is easy argument, I think, to make that structures like tokens, even fiat currency, are game-like structures. You can think of it as a perspective. It's not the only way you can define it, but you can certainly define it in such a fashion. Now, there is a quality that we recognize in games, which is that if somebody starts playing chess, they become a different kind of person. They become broody, thinky. It brings a significantly different persona out of that person. If somebody starts playing football, they become a different person again. And if somebody plays Twister, you know this game where you have to bodily go between people, a very different person. And we know this, and game designers even use this quality, that they are essentially designing persons or templates of persons. Now, if we think that there was this game that you cannot get out of, like a fiat currency, it would still be a game, but you wouldn't kind of recognize it as such because you would be entering there at birth and never getting out. But if we then assume that actually this game, just like the chess, just like the Twister, creates certain qualities of play, like the chess makes you broody, what does this make you? And I think Art kind of analyzed it well, that the structure, when you take a relation and you say, it was worth 7, whatever, you are creating a meaning which you're making the most meaningful, which then pushes you to care about those meanings, those numbers, and suppress the interest of the relation itself. And this, for me, is the sociopathic quality of it. And this is then an ethical question. Are the structures that we are building, even if they have labels that this is refi and this is Gitcoin and this is whatever, that might be an ethical part, like the contextual ethical. But are the structures themselves ethical? Are they pushing people that, okay, I put my money to refi, but I'm still hoping that it goes up, and going back to the same tendencies of playing the game? And how do we bring structural ethics to this conversation? Because if we are actually to build a different kind of economy, we need to. Otherwise, we will repeat what is the current finance and the up and down game. Everybody's playing with their tokens. About what? The partnership. That's a long. Now, I could say, but I've talked long enough, probably too long. But I can say, like, towards that. Yes. So I would quickly, I would separate it in several areas. First, there's the decision. Now, it is important to analyze, and this was brought out quite well, of how there is a problematic situation with the decision itself, but then you can think of kind of cultural implications. Okay, if it was decided this way, do we really know? Is there other secret promises? Is Shell able to have like meetings in a bar kind of a way? Because if the quality was already bad, there's probably other tracings of bad going from there. Secondly, we need to think that Shell is way better, or the people hired by Shell are way better at influence because they've been trained and they have a systematic program for it. So assume that you're a beginner compared to them when to think about how to influence these kind of projects when you come in. So even if it's no strings attached, it's not that these people don't have a skill to have an influence. And the third point, which goes to what you said, I was listening on the other room, that we support these companies. And therefore, we have to look at all of this as just support. This is a nihilistic argument. It's because it's really about always this type and quantity of support. Just that you have to support them by traveling this and that way doesn't then create this carte blanche that therefore we never question the support because we have supported them, because that's nihilism. Rather, you really have to, at every point when you're in a relation that you're dependent, which we are, you have to think that with each and every move, how you're transforming that relationship. And this relationship can happen if it has a transformative quality. And that's the main thing. It's not if the relationship exists, it's what is the transformative quality.
And I'd like to pick up on that, merging the issue of support, how we think of that our actions are like reproducing a certain pattern that we don't like to see, so we are hypocritical in some sense, and also the issue of the structural of the structures that we want there to be. And I see that there's the difference in takes on this may stem from two divergent versions of a post-capitalist future, where one is one where we have managed to reach this post-monetary economy because we have all these structures from the past that have established themselves and become scaffolds for us to do that. And so we still rely on them, but we have an additional layer. Or there's the version of the degrowth where we are okay with some sort of inefficiencies, some sort of collapse, some sort of lower level, low-tech infrastructure, and we don't have to rely on this scaffolds that we have in terms of energy production, distribution, that we have come to know. So which one of these? I think that we might have some vision ourselves, but that we haven't articulated which direction it goes, and I don't think these are either mutually exclusive per se or that they are the only two, but it's good to actually bring them to the table, say what actual future we envision in terms of post-capitalism, and then look at this and say, okay, which direction does this go to? I think this goes to the more accelerated, like additional layer, the first version of post-capitalism that we talked about, but this is not clear that this is the best option. Yeah, it's like, which direction are we heading towards? Which one do we want to head towards? Yes, it's very.
I mean, I think that, yeah, I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. I think probably the degrowthers are more would probably on average be a lot more negative on this than the other ones. But no, but I think the sort of relationship and structures that I think previous people have mentioned, I think like Art and Pekko and a couple of others before we came, for me, the name of that relationship is capital. Like that is the name, like this is the relationship. It's like a power relationship. It's sociopathic because it is one group trying to extract value from another, and that is like definitional, and it is unequal inherently to it. And of course, in this relationship of capital, Shell is above Gitcoin. Gitcoin is dependent. They need cash, they need money, and Shell has it because they have this already pre-existing relationship to power and to resources. And so if we're thinking about post-capitalism, I think what that means for me is basically moving away from the relationship of capital. Like that's what it should mean. It means that like most of our relationships and social structures that we're in are not predicated in the relationship of capital. Like, I mean, so it could be either direction. I think. I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty neutral on that, but. Yeah, I think that what we have to do is like get away from this relationship, and like the whole, I'm sorry, but like what you're talking about is Stockholm syndrome. Like it's like we're stuck in this system, and we
abusive relationship.
It is an abusive relationship that is based on capital. That I understand, I sympathize in the sense that I'm also stuck in that relationship. We kind of all are. Like I'm not clean by any means, and I know it's like hard, but like I have no choice to like not use products that have been touched by oil and gas. Like I don't have a choice, even though it goes against my ethics. That's why I said earlier, like in the bread chain conversation, I think the biggest problem, the rock and the hard place that we're in, is we have to live within the system as it exists now because it's huge, and as an individual we cannot change it, and we want to be against it. And the only way we can do that is
the only way we can change it is as an individual at the same time. This is not a paradox. Because all my actions, I'm part of
collective power.
And what my choices make the system, so do all of our choices. We are society. It's not like something outside of us and it's like the bad guys. But
right.
Can I comment on your thing?
But just to say, I don't think it's like, you can't say that like, oh, well, you are taking part in oil and gas
greenwashing.
That's your fault.
No,
like,
that's the classic.
This is what I'm saying when I mean like, it's not the individual's fault, I guess.
What? I thought. So, it was what you said is a nice bridge, though. I wanted to say. I was thinking like, okay. So if you think of Shell as kind of like the meme or the thing Shell itself, like as a being, it's kind of sad, right? It's like maybe like a tiger that doesn't want to kill a gazelle or something. It has to because it's in its nature. In the same way, like. Shell has it, it must be about fossil fuel almost. So I can be a bully towards Shell, like how I was earlier, like I'm angry, like fuck you, la la la, or become the therapist and go like, hey Shell, come on, get a hug. You've done all this terrible shit. Please give me 95% of your money and we'll help you become a better person. Kind of like an intervention, Don't maybe approach it with aggression, but like it's not easy. I'm great example of this, but I wanted to point out one other thing, like the irony or hypocrisy. So we're talking about this transition thing, and there's supposed to become new solutions. I like to think of this as, let's say, biodiversity. The more different ways we have, or different approaches, the better. So we want like many different things competing. So there's this thing called disruption theory. It's nothing to do with mathematics. I'm not sure if you know about this, but it's like kind of invented by Amazon, where people saying initially, lol, bookstore on the internet, you gotta be kidding me, I like smelling the books, like that's not gonna happen. But they didn't want to do that. They were gonna be like the everything store. And so for 10 years this company was not making any money, but then they realized like, oh shit, actually now it's the biggest one. So in this sense, to the traditional publishers, Amazon was very disruptive, right? And this like, imagine you're this grass field, this monocrop, you're there, you're full control, and suddenly this tiny little thing comes up, like a flower, and you're like, ha lol, it's just a small flower. You turn around, you're busy with your work, 2 weeks later, fuck, it took over half of the field, right? That's a disruptive little piece of greenery that comes up. So what's disruption theory? This is what you do. Gone. Kill it before it can take you over. And this is what we're fighting against constantly. So Uber buys up another company, Google buys up another company, Amazon, and they never come to light. Because, and it's a very natural thing, like they have to protect their centralized ideas. This is partly why the sociopathic behavior comes from. You cannot consider other people's things. Like, if somebody makes a project, it's really disruptive. Let's say Gitcoin, like, oh shit, you know, maybe all these people can come together and organize and do something better than us. But then you take away their business, so you're disruptive to them. So they have to act like that. Yeah. Anyway, that's what I wanted to point out.
A little bit. It's a. I'm working with a company called Impact Stream, providing funding to Togo, West Africa right now. We're live in the Gitcoin round, and the people in Togo, West Africa, mostly the communities we're assisting, are making less than $2,000 a year. A lot of them don't have clean water, don't have computers for their schools. That's what we're providing for them, and they don't care that the money is coming from the shell. Of course not. Of course not. They don't have clean water because they don't have wells. It's not because of shell.
If they have wells, they have poisoned groundwater next to shell.
Not that's really true, but we represent these people. We're getting as much funding to them as possible so they can submit project proposals and get the things they need to come up in the world. If you make more than $2,000 a year and you can live comfortably, by all means, like, don't accept shell money. But for these people, anything helps, and they will take it graciously.
Yes, of course, because that's the relationship of capital. And this is like a very, like, I mean, yeah, like this is colonialism, like this is a product. This is like the charity, philanthropy, industrial complex. Like, I would rather we don't have to rely on philanthropy and these types of things so that these people can have what they want. But like, we've had centuries of colonialism over these people where they have not been able to have the autonomy to build out the infrastructure for themselves. So I mean, it's still like I get your point, and I'm not saying like, oh, you're like bad for wanting to help, given the system, like there aren't too many options as an individual. But I'm saying if we want to like think clearly about what are the big problems that we need to solve and how do we solve them at a systemic level, which basically means we eradicate this problem, then we have to think much bigger than like giving donations to poor people in Africa. Like, that cannot be the way that they depend to keep living. Like the goal should be to get rid of this Impact Stream company, that we don't need them, to be honest.
Speaking of thinking bigger, I just wanted to do a remark with this map here. Beyond the specific partnership with Shell, I think that is very depends how much they pay. No, I was thinking that I mean, I almost changed my mind for this specific case, especially for the governance side of the question, because that's totally shitty that you just accept a partnership if you're a DAO, because that's a crucial thing, especially if it's a sensitive thing. But in general, I think that if we want to realize these new infrastructures, we need so much more money that we have now. I mean, now I think we are like so ridiculously small, and I don't think that the approach of just not engaging with these flows is useful. So I hope we can have more discussions like this so that we are more capable of taking good deals and finance more post-capitalism than helping capitalists with their funding post-capitalism. So yeah, I will go eating, but thank you for this.
Lunchtime! I love you. I love all of you.
Thank you.
I I didn't mean to be mean.